The Jewel of the Maldives Part 1. Chapter 1, The Arrival. The sun poured down over the Maldives like liquid gold, spilling across the ocean in shimmering waves. From above, the atolls looked like emeralds scattered on turquoise silk. But for Gemma Hart, sweat-beaded and sleep-deprived, it all felt a bit too pristine. The kind of beauty that made you suspicious, like someone had spent too long setting up the stage before pulling back the curtain. Her seaplane buzzed low across the reef, its engine hiccuping as it descended toward a sleek, private dock framed by palm trees and minimalist white umbrellas. There were no other guests waiting. Just one man in white linen, arms crossed, sunglasses on despite the shade. That would be Roman Gray, she guessed. She tucked her duffel tighter over her shoulder as the plane touched water, the spray cool against the open window. As she disembarked, the pilot gave her a wink, part friendly, part warning, before speeding away without a backward glance. Typical. Gemma stepped onto the dock and immediately felt her sandals slip slightly on the oiled wood. She caught herself, barely, and stood upright, trying not to look like the freelance diving instructor who hadn't slept in 30 hours and was living off airport almonds. The man didn't move to greet her. No handshake. No welcome. Just a slow, assessing scan from head to toe. Gemma Hart. His voice was low, clipped, not British, not American. Something smoother. Wealthy, in every syllable. She nodded, squinting slightly at him. Roman Gray. He didn't confirm it. Just turned and started walking, expecting her to follow. She did. The path to the villa was silent, broken only by the hum of cicadas and the distant hush of waves on sand. The resort, if you could even call it that, didn't look like anywhere she'd ever stayed. It was too perfect. Long wooden walkways stretched between villas suspended over crystalline water, every one angled for maximum sunset views. Not a tourist in sight. No reception desk, no welcome drink. Just luxury so quiet it was almost aggressive. They reached a private deck with an infinity pool that appeared to spill directly into the sea. Roman stopped and turned. "I'll make this quick," he said. "I require a dive guide for 1 week. Possibly 2. You'll be on call, every day, no exceptions. You'll dive with me and only me." Gemma blinked. "Right. You've got your certifications ready." He pulled a black waterproof card case from his linen shirt and handed it over. Everything was in perfect order. Rescue diver, advanced open water, nitrox. Even his handwriting on the forms looked expensive. She flipped through them, buying herself a few seconds to get a read on him. He didn't fidget. Didn't smile. Didn't do anything, really, except watch. So, she began carefully, handing the papers back. "Any special dive goals? Wildlife? Wrecks? Something you're hoping to see?" His jaw ticked. "The first crack in the marble. There's a ring," he said. "You'll see it tomorrow." Gemma opened her mouth to ask a follow-up, but he was already turning away. The meeting was over. The staff bungalow they assigned her was larger than her last apartment. White linens, private plunge pool, fruit bowl so pristine it looked fake. She dropped her gear and sank into a wide armchair by the window. Outside, the reef shimmered just below the surface, bright corals, curious fish, and a kind of quiet that wasn't peaceful. It was deliberate. Like someone had curated every detail just for the effect. She didn't like it. It was too quiet. Too perfect. That evening, as the sky lit up with hues of mango and coral, Gemma wandered down to the dive shack at the far end of the island, a minimalist glass cube set atop a private dock. Roman's gear was already there, arranged like it had never been used. New, top of the line, zero wear. Everything custom fitted and monogrammed with subtle R.G tags. He was waiting, of course. Not in dive gear, but in dark slacks and a pale shirt, barefoot, standing at the edge of the dock and staring out at the sea like it owed him something. She tried again. So, this ring, it's lost. He didn't turn. Not yet. Right. Cryptic billionaire mode fully engaged. Gemma sighed quietly, running a hand through her salt-damp curls. She was used to high-maintenance clients, rich honeymooners, influencers, nervous first-timers who wanted underwater GoPro shots more than actual dives. But this was something else. Roman wasn't just difficult. He was unknowable. And yet every part of her diver's instinct was whispering, this job isn't about the ocean. He finally glanced at her. We dive at sunrise. Be ready. And then he was gone, footsteps silent across the dock. That night, Gemma couldn't sleep. She kept the curtains open, watching moonlight dance across the reef. Somewhere out there, a man was planning a dive for a ring that hadn't been lost yet. And she was supposed to find it. She didn't know the whole story. Not even close. But she did know one thing. Whatever Roman Gray was looking for, it wasn't just under the water. Chapter 2, The First Dive. Gemma's alarm went off just before 5. Outside, the sky was still navy blue, the stars only just starting to fade. The horizon was a hazy line between sea and sky, no sun yet, only the promise of one. She sat up slowly, her body sore from the travel and her mind still stuck on last night's conversation, or rather, the complete lack of one. She had questions. Lots. But Roman Gray wasn't the kind of man who gave answers easily. Her wetsuit was still hanging where she'd left it, damp from yesterday's gear check. She pulled it on in the dim light, cinching the sleeves tightly, and tried to shake off the nerves prickling at the back of her neck. This wasn't her first luxury client. But something about him. It wasn't just his silence. It was the intensity of it. The way he studied her like a riddle. The way he didn't explain himself because he didn't seem to believe he had to. Still, a job was a job. And this one paid more than any she'd taken in a year. So she tied her hair back, grabbed her dive bag, and stepped out into the morning breeze. The air smelled like salt and frangipani. He was already at the dock, of course. Roman stood at the edge, facing the reef, barefoot again, wearing an ultralight black wetsuit that somehow looked tailored. He didn't turn when she arrived, just gave a small nod as she approached. Gemma set down her gear beside his, giving everything one final check. Regulator, BCD, tanks. All immaculate. All brand new. She tried not to feel judged as she strapped into her own older, well-worn equipment, the kind with sun-faded straps and handwritten initials. He glanced at it once. Didn't comment. But she felt it. So she said lightly, double-checking her dive computer, "What exactly are we looking for?" He didn't answer right away. Then he pulled a small, matte black box from the pocket of his dry bag and handed it to her. No label. No inscription. Gemma opened it carefully. Inside was a ring, and not just a ring. It was massive, the kind of diamond that seemed ridiculous even in daylight. Pale blue, flawless. The cut was sharp, regal, almost antique. She squinted at it, trying not to gawk. "That's a bold choice," she said, blinking. "Engagement ring." Roman didn't respond directly. "You'll carry it in the sample vault," he said instead. "We'll do a standard drop, 15 meters. Just a test dive." Gemma stared at him. "You want me to bring this, down there?" "I want to see how it looks underwater," he said. "That's all." "Right. Because normal people needed to know how their multimillion-dollar rings looked at the bottom of the ocean before they proposed." "Sure." She slid the ring into a small pressure-safe clear vault and clipped it to her BCD. It was double-locked, reinforced, secure, but not foolproof. "Okay," she said carefully. "We stick close to the reef. Visibility should be good. No current. We'll go down slow, circle the shelf, test the light, come back up." Roman just nodded and followed her into the water like he'd done it 100 times, smooth, silent, professional. Gemma took a breath, leaned back, and let the sea take her. The silence underwater was instant and complete. Only the sound of her breathing and the quiet tick of bubbles rising. Sunlight cut through the water in columns, catching on schools of silver fish that darted away from their bubbles. The reef stretched ahead of them like a living city, towers of coral, purple and gold, soft sway of anemones. A green turtle floated past lazily, unfazed. She signaled to Roman, "Okay." He gave a tight thumbs up and gestured forward. They moved slowly, hovering just above the coral. Gemma guided them toward a small shelf where the light hit best, shallow enough for color to pop, deep enough to feel immersive. She reached for the sample vault and turned it carefully, letting the light catch the diamond inside. It was almost absurd, glowing like something mythical, reflecting the blues and greens of the ocean. Roman floated behind her, arms relaxed, but his eyes didn't leave the ring. Not once. She adjusted the angle again, just slightly, and then it happened. Her hand slipped. Not much, just the smallest jerk, enough to knock the vault against her BCD strap. The latch, slightly loose, popped open with a metallic click. The ring tumbled out, just a flicker of light, and then sank. It spun slowly in the water, weightless and glinting, before vanishing between two thick clusters of coral. Gemma's heart stopped. She swam after it, kicking hard, trying to catch it mid-fall, but the current caught it first, subtle but strong enough to pull it downward, deeper into a narrow crevice in the reef. She hovered there, inches from the gap, scanning with her dive light. Gone. Just like that. Gone. Her breath hitched. She could feel her pulse slamming in her ears even through the regulator. She turned slowly. Roman was still floating in place, watching her. He didn't rush. Didn't swim over. Just stared. His face unreadable behind the dive mask. She signed to him, lost. He didn't move. Then, slowly, he lifted one hand, not in panic, not in frustration, but just held it up in a flat, still palm. Wait. Back on the dock, 10 minutes later, Gemma stood dripping in the sun, trying to keep her voice level. I had it locked. I swear, it was secured. I've never lost anything in a dive before. Roman was silent. Not angry. Not yelling. Just calm. Too calm. That ring, he said finally, peeling off his wetsuit like he wasn't in any rush, is worth $5 million. Gemma's mouth opened, then closed again. I'll cover it. I mean, I can't, not now, obviously, she sputtered. But I'll dive again. I'll find it. It couldn't have gone far. He nodded slowly, toweling off his hair. His face was unreadable again. You'll stay, he said. Gemma blinked. What? You'll stay, he repeated. Until you find it. And then he added, without blinking. I'll cover your room. Your meals. Everything. But you don't leave this island until it's back in my hand. Gemma stared at him, stunned. You're serious? Roman turned, finally looking her dead in the eye. Dead serious. Then he walked off the dock, barefoot, silent, disappearing again into that glassy calmness that hid everything. She stood there, the sun rising higher over the reef, wetsuit clinging to her, lungs still tight from the dive. She had officially lost the most expensive thing she had ever touched. And now, apparently, she was going to be living on a billionaire's island until she found it again. Or drown trying. Chapter 3, The Contract. The next morning came heavy and humid. The sky was a lazy watercolor of pale pink and blue, and the ocean below it looked almost too calm, like it was daring her to dive again. Gemma sat at a teak table outside the villa, nursing a cup of strong black coffee that had gone cold. She'd barely slept. The sound of the waves had turned into static in her head, looping between disbelief and guilt. She could still see the ring sinking, the glint, the spin, the helpless drop into coral shadow. She had replayed it all night, frame by frame, trying to convince herself she could have done something different. But every version ended the same, the diamond disappearing, Roman's unreadable stare through his dive mask, and that one unshakable sentence. You'll stay until you find it. The resort staff were polite, but distant now. Word had spread fast, the instructor who lost the billionaire's ring. The whispers floated behind her like tiny mosquitoes. She tried not to listen. By mid-morning, she was called to Roman's villa. It wasn't just a villa. It was a glass and stone mansion built on its own private pier, suspended over crystal water. The kind of place where even the air felt filtered. Everything smelled faintly of salt and cedar and something expensive she couldn't name. When she arrived, Roman was already there, sitting at a long table, laptop open, coffee untouched. He was barefoot again, a detail that felt strangely human, though the rest of him didn't. A woman was seated beside him, tall, sharp-featured, hair in a severe bun, tablet in hand. Her smile was the kind that didn't reach her eyes. Gemma Hart, Roman said without looking up. This is Elise. My assistant. Elise nodded, expression neutral. Mr. Gray asked me to draw up the terms. The terms, Gemma repeated. Like a contract. Roman leaned back, finally meeting her eyes. Exactly like one. He gestured for Elise to slide the tablet across the table. Gemma hesitated before taking it. Her own name sat at the top of the document in sleek digital type, right above a dense block of legal text. It was formal, airtight, and uncomfortably specific. The undersigned, Gemma Hart, agrees to remain on the premises of Gray Holdings property located at Varvali Atoll, Maldives, for the duration of search and recovery operations relating to 1 lost engagement ring, estimated value $5 million USD. She skimmed downward. Daily pay, generous. Accommodation, covered. Equipment, provided. Freedom to leave, none. Her stomach sank. This is excessive, she said, glancing up. I said I'd help you find it. You don't need I do, Roman interrupted, tone flat. Elise tapped something on the tablet, eyes never leaving the screen. It's a liability measure. The item's value is considerable. You'll have full access to diving equipment, GPS, and underwater drones. You'll be compensated well. Gemma exhaled slowly. I'm not asking to be paid. I'm asking not to be trapped. Roman's voice softened just enough to make her look at him. Trapped? Hardly. Think of it as employed. She stared at him for a long moment. He was perfectly calm. That stillness again, unnerving, deliberate, like he knew exactly how far he could push. Do I have a choice? She asked quietly. He didn't smile. You could always swim home. The signature field blinked at her, waiting. Gemma bit the inside of her cheek, the salt of the air mixing with the taste of her own frustration. $5 million. A lost ring. A man who thought contracts could fix anything. But the truth was simple, she did owe him. Even if it wasn't really her fault, even if the latch had failed, or the current had shifted, the guilt clung to her. And she couldn't leave with that kind of debt. So she picked up the stylus and signed. The sound of the electronic chime as the contract locked was louder than it should have been. Roman closed the laptop, almost satisfied. Good, he said. We start again tomorrow. Dawn dive. Gemma blinked. You still trust me underwater? He looked at her, long enough that she had to fight the urge to look away. I trust that you want to fix your mistake, he said finally. Then he stood, nodded once to Elise, and walked out onto the deck, phone already to his ear. Elise stayed behind. Her voice was cool and clipped. He doesn't usually tolerate accidents. Gemma frowned. Lucky me, then. Elise's gaze flicked up. Luck has very little to do with it. Then she gathered her tablet and left, heels clicking softly on the wood. Gemma stayed seated long after they were gone. The sea outside was stunning, impossibly blue, perfectly still, but she felt like it was mocking her. The quiet, the beauty, the sense of isolation all wrapped together like a silk cage. She picked up the tablet again, scrolling to the last clause. The contractor shall remain on site until the recovery of the item is complete or until Mr. Roman Gray releases them from the agreement. She read it twice. The phrasing stuck. Until he releases them. Not if she finds it. Not when it's over. Until he decided it was over. Her pulse thudded. Gemma pushed back from the table, stepping out onto the balcony. Below her, the water sparkled with lazy sunlight. Tiny fish darted between coral heads. Somewhere out there, beneath 20 meters of silence, that ridiculous ring was still lying in the reef, a flash of wealth lost to the sea. And now her future, her freedom, her reputation, all of it, was tied to finding it. She exhaled, long and slow, feeling the salt in her lungs. Fine. If he wanted her to stay, she'd stay. But she wouldn't make it easy for him. That evening, as the sky went purple and orange, she saw him again, alone on the pier, hands in his pockets, staring out at the horizon like he was waiting for something that never came. Gemma almost went to ask about the dive plan. Almost. But something about the way he stood there, perfectly still, the breeze pulling at his shirt, made her stop. He looked less like a man guarding his fortune and more like one guarding a secret. She returned to her bungalow, restless and uneasy. Outside, the island was beautiful. Inside, she couldn't shake the feeling that she had just stepped into something deeper than any reef. And maybe, just maybe, the ocean wasn't the only thing hiding something at the bottom. Chapter 4, The Island Whispers. The wind changed the next morning. Gemma noticed it the moment she stepped out onto the deck, wetsuit rolled halfway up, dive gear strapped over one shoulder. The breeze had shifted, still warm, still salted with ocean mist, but now it came from the east, pushing clouds across the sun and stirring up something colder underneath. Even the birds sounded quieter. She wasn't superstitious. Not usually. Not in her line of work. But the silence that clung to the island that morning felt unnatural, like the whole place was holding its breath. She arrived early at the dive dock, hoping to prep solo, but Roman was already there. Always. He didn't greet her. He barely looked at her. Just stood over the gear bench with his back turned, adjusting the straps of his dive vest with surgical focus. They spoke only in signals underwater. Another dive. Another search grid. Another hour combing the reef shelf where the current had dragged the ring. Still no sign of it. When they surfaced, neither of them spoke. Roman hauled himself out of the water, peeled off his gear, and walked off toward his villa like he had somewhere better to be, and maybe he did. Maybe he always did. Gemma stayed behind, rinsing equipment, fingers wrinkled from hours in salt water, eyes scanning the sea like she could will the ring to float back up from the depths. It didn't. Later that afternoon, she wandered into the staff side of the island. Off limits, technically. But no one stopped her. Back here, the polished marble and clean white linen gave way to something simpler, sandy walkways, weathered wood, rusted bike racks leaning against faded bungalows. Staff quarters. Real life. She found the maintenance hut near the back edge of the jungle path, hoping to ask about the underwater drone Roman had mentioned in passing. Inside, 2 local dive techs, young guys in grease-stained polos, were gathered around a battered laptop, watching old reef footage and eating something out of paper bowls. They looked up when she entered, then exchanged glances. "You're the new one," the older one said, late 20s, shoulder-length hair, friendly voice with an edge of curiosity. "Gemma," she offered, wiping her hands on her shorts. "I'm looking for the drone setup." He pointed to a locked cabinet without standing. "Mr. Gray's. You'll need clearance." "Figures." She walked over, pretending to check the hinges, then turned back casually. "How long's he been coming here?" she asked, like it was nothing. The younger guy laughed, not mean, but low. "Too long." "Every year," the older one added. "Same time. Same villa. Always alone?" she asked. They glanced at each other again. The silence stretched a beat too long. "Mostly," the older one said, finally. "Sometimes women. Sometimes assistants. Never the same." She raised an eyebrow. "And the ring?" The younger guy smiled without humor. "Ah. The cursed one." Gemma froze. "Excuse me." He gestured toward the water, playful but not joking. "It always disappears." "What do you mean always?" The older one spoke slowly. "You're not the first to look for that ring." Gemma felt her pulse shift. The younger guy leaned back in his chair. "Last year it was a guy named Andre. Dive master from Mauritius. Before that, 2 years ago, a Thai girl. Don't remember her name. He never talks about them. Just hires. Dives. Drops the thing. Makes them find it." Gemma's throat dried. "You're saying he loses it on purpose?" No one knows, the older one said, voice quieter now. But every time, same thing. Fancy ring. Lots of pressure. And then, gone. She stared at them, trying to find the punchline. There wasn't one. And the ring, she asked. Did anyone ever find it? The older one looked at her like he wished he had a better answer. Not that we heard. The air felt thicker suddenly. Like the heat had turned into weight. She left the hut without saying much more, their voices fading behind her like an echo she wasn't sure she was supposed to hear. That night, she skipped the beach dinner. The resort served food to guests on the western side of the island, at open-air tables surrounded by torches and the sound of gentle waves. She didn't want to see Roman. She didn't want to see Elise. She didn't want to smile for staff who now saw her as part of the story they already knew the ending to. Instead, she took a long walk around the perimeter of the island, barefoot, salt drying on her skin, moonlight turning the sand to silver. The water whispered beside her, low and soft, like it was sharing secrets with the shore. She stopped at the edge of a small outcropping and sat down on a slab of driftwood, staring out at the reef. Somewhere beneath all that shimmering blue, the ring was still down there, a glint of ice hiding in warm coral. If it was ever there at all. That was the part that started to really get to her. The itch in her brain that she couldn't scratch. What if the whole thing was designed to make her stay? What if the ring had never fallen? What if it had never existed at all, not really? And more importantly, why? What kind of man built traps this beautiful just to see who would step into them? Back in her bungalow, she pulled out her dive log. She flipped past the pages of notes, sketches, and reef maps. Then she turned to a blank page and wrote. Day 3. Visibility high. No currents. Search grid expanded. No sign of the ring. Then, in smaller letters beneath that. Locals say it's cursed. Not the ring. Him. She closed the logbook and stared at it. The thing was, she wasn't afraid of curses. She didn't believe in haunted diamonds or karmic salt water. But she did believe in people. And she'd met enough of them in this line of work to know. Some came to the ocean to find things. Some came to hide them.
Thanks for listening to Billionaire Romance Stories, where love meets luxury in the most unexpected places. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like, subscribe, and drop a comment. We love hearing your favorite twists and favorite theories. And don't forget to ring that bell, because in this world of yachts, secrets, and luxurious romance, the next story is always one click away.